folks, welcome to example 8. I've got another quadratic inequality. Let's solve it algebraically, and then we'll take a look at the graph. Just make sure our algebra matches our graph. Never hurts to kind of have a little check on yourself. But if I've got a quadratic inequality, the first thing I want to do is take my quadratic expression and set it equal to 0. I want to find those specific values of x that I want to put onto my sign pattern. And you might think, oh, I can factor this, right? And I would too. I'd be like, dude, it's x minus 4x plus 1, right? And I'd say, well, outer is x, inner is negative 4x, so that gives me my negative 3x. I'm feeling good. But if you look at last, negative 4 times positive 1 is not positive 4. So this doesn't ultimately work, which is fine. We just need to recognize it and then use the quadratic formula. So I'm going to use a quadratic formula here. And I'm going to get a is 1, b is negative 3, and c is 4. So let's go run this, right? So I'm going to have x is going to equal, and I'll put the fraction bar there. We've got negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared. Let me extend this, minus 4 times a times c all over 2a, right? Okay, so let's work this. I've got negative 3 squared, which is 9. This is a positive, 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 and it's being subtracted. So I ultimately have 9 minus 16. So I have a negative 7 under that radicand. So I'm looking at 3, because a negative and negative 3, right? Plus or minus the square root of negative 7 over 2. And as we learned way back in chapter 2 from the college algebra book, this is where the i's come out. So this is going to be 3 plus or minus I root 7 over 2. And ultimately, these are imaginary numbers. I can't graph these on an xy axis, right? So we have no real zeros. We have imaginary ones. And that's all fun, you know, like, okay, cool, I have imaginary zeros, but there's nothing I can do with that in the real world. Like, I literally can't graph them. So how does that play out on a sign pattern? All right, so let's think about this. And then I'm going to match this up with the graph. So let's make our smushed xy axis, okay, like we have been. I'm going to put x's below, and then the signs of my y values, or my quadratic expression value of x squared minus 3x plus 4 above. Now, there are no specific x values I can write here, because 3 plus I root 7 over 2 does not exist in the real world, and 3 minus I root 7 over 2 doesn't exist. Great. So I don't have anything to put down here, which is not a problem. So I can pick anything I want as a test point, right? Pick any number. I'm going to pick 0, right? If I were to try 0, right, 0 squared minus 3 times 0 plus 4 is positive, which is telling me my entire parabola, or my entire quadratic expression, regardless of the x coordinate I plug in, it's going to be positive. Try something else. Let's try negative 1, just so you can see it, right? Negative 1 squared is 1, right? Minus 3 times negative 1, that would be 1 plus 3, plus 4, that would also be positive, right? You can try plugging in 7. Right? If you plugged in 7 squared is 49, minus 21 plus 4, positive. So what this is telling me is regardless of the x value, I don't care what x coordinate you give me, this expression, x squared minus 3x plus 4, is always going to be positive. Right? And if we're not sure, let's just kind of take this in on the graphing calculator. So let me clear that out, and let's roll with x squared minus 3x plus 4. And let's graph this. So I'm going to hit zoom 6. Right? And take a look, right? This thing is always above the x-axis. It didn't have x-intercepts because it didn't come low enough, right? This just always stayed above the x-axis. Totally fine. We just want to recognize it. And here, our sign pattern is matching our graph. And so once you get the sign pattern figured out, the next thing is always to take a look at your inequality. So because that says less than or equal to 0, I want to find the negative symbols and I want to find the zeros. And when I look at this, I don't have either, right? I don't see a negative symbol. I don't see a 0. So my end game answer here is going to be no solution, right? Because there was no x value that I could plug in that would leave this quadratic expression being negative. Okay. Now on the flip of it, let's just put a pin in that. I want to give you a counter. All right, so this is not the original problem, but let's say this had said, when is x squared minus 3x plus 4 greater than or equal to 0? Right? In that case, I'm looking for plus signs and zeros, and then this whole thing is a plus sign, right? So the answer in that case would have been all real numbers, because regardless of what x coordinate you gave me, if I plugged it into this quadratic expression, it was going to be positive, okay? All right, thanks so much, everyone. Bye.